And again, I talked about the pushing versus pulling data. That also ties into kind of the benefits of webhooks in the sense that, like I just mentioned, it is real-time interaction. So rather than us waiting to pull every 10 minutes or every hour or whatever the schedule we set up or that frequency, now it's when that event occurs, that system is actually pushing the data to us. Now, I put a star on there because like everything, there is more details to it. And in this case, it means it's, I wanted to note that it's asynchronous. And what this means, if you're looking at a system and you're saying, hey, it's a real-time event, it's true that it's real-time because the moment that event occurs, Webhook will fire and send that request to Smart Connect. But it's asynchronous in the sense that it doesn't hang up that system that had the webhook. So it's not waiting on a response back from us when it fires. So the user's going about their day, they create a new order, a new customer, or a new ticket in whatever system, and there's a webhook tied to that, that will in real time send that event off, but we're not waiting for that response. So the event occurs in real time, but there's not that delay to say, hey, was this successful or not? So that's where we say it's asynchronous. It's running in the background without tying up any of the UI for the user, so they don't notice any delay or any performance issues there. Now, there's a big benefit in the sense of, especially if you're looking at e-commerce or web stores, a lot of times you want to get that information immediately, right? If someone's on that web store and they go ahead and say, all right, create a customer or create that order and send that through and they hit submit, we want to see once that new order is created, it immediately flowing across, hitting Smart Connect, and then sending it into your ERP or wherever else you want that to integrate to. So that's a large benefit to how this is going to run. The other thing that's a benefit, and I've kind of alluded to it as I've been talking about pulling data versus having it pushed, is we get to control the amount of data we're processing, right? So if we're pulling that data on a schedule, say, every 10 minutes, every hour, once a day, we're generally pulling a lot more information, and sometimes we might be pulling records we don't need to over and over because we're not able to push just the recently created or just the newly updated record. So this allows us to essentially get it down to one record at a time. Once we see that event occur in that system, trigger an integration off of that. Now, there's a couple things I want to talk about here because at this point, it seems like, hey, we should use webhooks for everything. But there's always considerations that we need to have in mind. And this is kind of my last part of the agenda item on additional considerations, what we want to look for as we're designing these. Now, one particular case where we may not want to use a webhook is if that system we're pulling that data from is having massive amounts of updates going through. They're doing mass updates to records fairly frequently. Because what's going to happen is if they have another process that goes and updates, let's say, 5,000 records at a time, each one of those that gets updated, if we have an event and a webhook on it, is going to try to call an individual integration and push that off to Smart Connect. Now, would it work? Yes. But is it efficient? Probably not in that case because you're doing 5,000 individual calls as it's being sent out. So if you have a system that's having mass updates or mass creation of records occurring frequently, in that case, you probably want to keep it with the method that you'd be using before now, where we actually have a scheduled process and we send that request to their API and we say, all right, pull all these records that have been modified in the last, X amount of time. So in that case, we're only sending through, or in that case, we're not running, 5,000 individual integration runs. We're running one larger integration that's dealing with a larger amount of data one time at a scheduled interval. So it's things like that you want to keep in mind to say, all right, how many times is this system being updated? What does it look like? Is it user or is it another system or automated process that's doing those updates or those creations? And then kind of build and design your integrations off of that as you go along.